Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross, and it is time for a preview of the 2025 US Open. Recording from my New York hotel room. I'll be here for the first 10 days of the main draw. Working for US Open Radio. Tune in, usopen.org, US Open app. If you're driving in the car, if you prefer the audio experience, ball by ball, play by play, check it out. Anyway, recording this far later than I would like to be. In an ideal world, it is late on a Saturday night, just ahead of the first ever Sunday main draw start in US Open history, although the delay is for a beautiful reason, which I will share. This is rare, but I actually have the same college roommate at Syracuse University all 4 years. There were others that shuffled in and out, but this guy was a constant. He's my brother from another mother. And on Friday was Bruno's wedding. So he got married to his beautiful now wife, Sophia. It was a Friday wedding. So right after the draw came out, I ended up on a plane to Washington, D.C., so I could be there for his wedding as a groomsman. It was a spectacular day and night and celebration. So that is why this has come out late. All right, US Open, medium fast hard court. Nothing crazy on the speed end of things, but certainly a surface that rewards attacking tennis and offense. Good serving is going to be effective. However, there's also an extra emphasis on durability. Best of five like all the other majors, but given it's so late in the year, players have more miles on the legs and body and more wear and tear, plus you're outdoors in the elements where you can get heat and humidity. You got to be made from tough stuff in order to play well at the US Open. It is the biggest physical test among all the majors, in my view. Plus the hard courts tend to beat up the body a little bit harder anyway. My reaction to the draw, I don't want to spoil anything in our quarter-by-quarter preview where we'll do dark horses and upset alerts and popcorn matchups. But based on I'll say this, I'll give you a little Easter egg. The tournament is really setting up to peak in the quarterfinals. Alcaraz and Sinner got tough quarterfinal draws. And then the other two quarters are going to be a little bit more difficult to predict, a little more out in the open. Last year, we'll do a quick last year US Open recap. There were some big upsets in the opening week. Popyrin beat Djokovic. Van de Zandschulp beat Alcaraz. It was an all-American semifinal between Taylor Fritz and Frances Tiafoe. Tiafoe got a retirement from Dimitrov late in the tournament. It was a really strong run from Taylor when he got another win over Alexander Zverev, which was the last of kind of well, actually, it wasn't the latest, but it was part of a string of wins that he had over Zverev last summer into the fall. Draper made his first major semifinal. Struggled physically in that semi against Jannik Sinner, and it ended up being Sinner Fritz in the final. A near flawless performance from Jannik Sinner against Taylor. Fritz had some opportunities in that match, but ultimately Sinner showed his class. A very buttoned up performance from Jannik to win his first ever US Open title. All right. That just about does it for the preamble. Let's get into this quarter by quarter, beginning with the top seed, Jannik Sinner. He's got Draper, Musetti, Paul, Bublik, Kaboli, Shapovalov, and Diallo. My dark horse here is Nuno Borges. My upset alert is Alexander Bublik. And my early popcorn is Musetti versus Giovanni Pecci Pericard in round one. So Borges, I'll start with the results. Last three hard court slams for Nuno. He's gone fourth round, third round. And I love his skill. I think it's underrated. He's got a flat backhand. He's got a forehand that he attacks with well. He's a solid spot server. He has volleys. He's got a great forehand drop shot, which can be kind of an X factor when he's looking for finishes. He's not the quickest around the court, but I really love his skills. Tommy Paul is his seed for the second round, and Tommy's been off his game. So let me just actually grab my paper draw here. I actually have Borges making the fourth round. I have him beating Brandon Holt. I have him beating Tommy Paul. I have him playing Lorenzo Sonego, but it could be Cilic, could be Bublik, but I have Sonego. And then I have him in the fourth round. I won't spoil against who, except you might be able to guess. My upset alert is Alexander Bublik. I don't like how he managed his schedule here. It's a bit of a head scratcher. He decided to play the post-Wimbledon clay. He won Stade. He won Kitzbühel. Okay. It was interesting at the time that he chose to play those events. I didn't realize that it would be at the expense of playing not just Toronto, which to me was understandable, but also Cincinnati. And now he comes into a tournament where he's really struggled at this event to feel the conditions, hasn't played on hard court in a while, can be kind of uneven mentally at majors, especially. Like, even if you look at his recent results, the one blip in the radar was a disappointing loss in the first round at Wimbledon. His last 3 Australian Opens and his last 2 U.S. Opens, all first-round exits. So 5 in a row at the hardcourt majors. And he gets Marin Cilic in the first round. We saw how dangerous he can be at Wimbledon, although Marin isn't really bringing it week in and week out these days at his age. Early popcorn, Musetti Pericard. This is an interesting one. First of all, I would refute the idea that Giovanni Pecci Pericard just isn't entertaining because he's a serve bot. I would say that the most entertaining match of the entire first round at Wimbledon was GMP against Taylor Fritz. That was my favorite match of the first round. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I thought it was tremendous theater. So there's that. Pericard had a nice little run in Winston-Salem, so should be feeling somewhat confident. And Musetti is 1-4 since the Roland Garros semifinals. So I don't have him on upset alert, but certainly a player who's been struggling, who now faces a dangerous opponent in the first round. I will certainly have that match on my radar. My quarterfinal prediction is Jannik Sinner over Jack Draper. Well, first of all, this would be a rematch of last year's semifinal. I am not concerned about Draper coming in, even though we haven't seen him since Wimbledon, because he had a little arm surgery. He pulled out of both Canada and Cincinnati very, very early, so there was a clear timetable there where as soon as he decided to have the operation, he knew he was going to miss both events. But from everything I'm reading and from everything I've gathered, Jack has had plenty of time to train in the lead up to this U.S. Open, and he's actually done a lot of gym work. So I don't expect fitness or physicality to be an issue for Draper, like it often is for a player coming off of injury. And Jack has so much experience coming into events, even majors, at coming off of injury or under compromised circumstances and being able to go on a run. And let's not forget what we saw in the beginning of the year on the hard courts. Jack Draper was clearly, at least from a consistency standpoint, the third best player in the world after Sinner and Alcaraz. Like, through the Sunshine Double, that's who he was. So now we're back on the hard court seeing Jack for the first time in a while. Like, I'm pretty high on Jack Draper, but I can't have him go through Jannik Sinner. I'm not ready to pull that upset card, especially because I don't really love the matchup here for Draper. I find that in those on the ad side exchange, Draper's forehand and a Sinner's backhand, Jannik plays so fast, and Shelton has this issue as well, that it's really difficult, I think, for Draper to produce off of his forehand in that cross court just because there's a time issue there. And also Sinner's backhand return goes a really long way just to minimize the +1 forehand looks that Draper tends to get when he hits that slice serve to righties. So Sinner over Draper in Jannik Sinner's quarter. The number 3 seed is Alexander Zverev. His quarter is de Minaur, Khachanov, Rublev, Cerundolo, Humbert, FAA, and Tsitsipas. My dark horse here is Matteo Arnaldi. My upset alert is Stefanos Tsitsipas. And my early popcorn is Rublev versus Prismic in round 1. Arnaldi, this isn't his first rodeo as a dark horse. I'm a big fan of his A game when he really has it flowing. He gets a lot on the forehand. He can be threatening off the backhand. He moves very well. He hits drop shots and comes forward. So there's really kind of a lot to deal with when Arnaldi's in full flow. You're not really afraid of his serve because it's pretty inaccurate. But other than that, I kind of like everything about Arnaldi's foundation. And he's in an interesting little section. So Francisco Cerundolo first round. All right, quick hard court against Cerundolo. You're okay with that. You feel like Arnaldi is really in with a chance. And that's an early popcorn as well, that one right there. And then he's in the Khachanov de Minaur section. So it's just enough where you allow your imagination in this part of the draw. You allow your imagination to wander and dream of big things potentially for Matteo Arnaldi. Maybe, just because you're not dealing with one of the giants in that particular part of the draw. Upset alert is Stefanos Tsitsipas. There were a few options for upset alert in this quarter, but for Tsitsipas, there's just a lot going against him right now. He played Winston-Salem. He lost to Bu Yunchao-Kete 3-2. He has never been past the third round at the U.S. Open. Even in his prime years, even when he was making final weekends at the Australian Open, he never seemed to figure out this event, which was always odd. Alexander Muller is Tsitsipas' first-round opponent. The good news, if you're Steph, is that Muller is not going to hit you off the court with any particular shot, but he's a very solid all-around player, does not beat himself. There aren't a ton of glaring weaknesses to attack when it comes to Alexander Muller. So look, I mean that's a legitimate first round opponent where Tsitsipas is going to need to show up and play solid tennis. And I believe his second round, it could be Medjedovic. And Medjedovic, he beat Tsitsipas in February when he couldn't even walk. He was limping around. It was the craziest match of the year. Medjedovic was severely injured and still won the match. That one was wild. Early popcorn is Rublev versus Prismic. So Prismic had that awesome match against Djokovic first round at the Australian Open 2 years ago, and I've kind of been waiting for him to navigate his way through the challenger ranks, although it is an uphill battle for a guy like Prismic, who does not have big weapons, but he has phenomenal movement, great legs, and this is the year where he has made his push. He is 38-11 across all levels, mostly playing in challengers. He has made 5 total challenger finals, and he's converted 2 of those into titles. So I'm really excited. And he qualified here. So we won 3 matches already. Again, he's just been 78% win rate this year, and he's not playing like ITFs. He's playing challenger level. So, I mean, that's legit. That gets your attention. I'm really excited to see how he looks against Rublev. Will he look underpowered? Will he be able to put up a fight? Will his movement make it difficult for Rublev to hit through him? Because if Rublev can't hit through you, then not a lot of players can. So I'm very excited for that one. All right, quarterfinal prediction. I've got Zverev over de Minaur. This bottom 8th is particularly interesting as far as options. I have a Zverev Rublev 4th round, and Zverev's a tough matchup for Andrei Rublev. Rublev just his favorite pattern, hitting those inside out forehands into the backhand. You get nowhere against Zverev in that pattern. Zverev with his forehand, he can kind of pattern change down the line and set the ad side cross court. So I think it's a pretty bad matchup. On the bottom half, you've got de Minaur, you've got Khachanov, you've got Arnaldi, who I made as my dark horse. But between de Minaur and Khachanov, that's a tricky one. I just go with the variety of de Minaur. Like, I think Alex can hit that short slice, drop shot a fair amount, keep the ball low with his kind of bunty backhand down the line into Khachanov's Western grip forehand. Doesn't like that low contact point. Because when you look at de Minaur, Khachanov, you're like, all right, two physical beasts, consistent from the back of the court. What gives here? And for me, what gives is just de Minaur's ability to put Khachanov in some more uncomfortable spots that he doesn't really like to play from. That's why I have de Minaur in the quarters. But look, I am actually feeling really good about Zverev coming into this tournament. And it's been a long time since I've felt particularly optimistic about Zverev, but I think he's done a great reset here since losing first round at Wimbledon to Rinderknecht. He took some time off. Like, that was step one. I was saying all throughout the clay court, the end of the clay court season and grass court season, that he played way too much tennis and that he had to be burnt out. And then he confirmed on the Nothing Major podcast. He was like, yeah, I was burnt out. I was like, yeah, for sure you were, because that schedule was insane. So he took some time off, didn't even touch a racket. Then he went and trained somewhere fresh, got a new voice in his ear at the Rafa Nadal Academy. And he got professional help for his mental health. And that might be the most important one out of all of the factors here, because that's really what I've been calling for a long time for Zverev, is to just take an active role in trying to improve the head instead of a passive role in just, if you'll recall, when Zverev lamented how he's just not good enough against Sinner in the Australian Open final, my thing was, your tennis is good enough. Your head's not good enough. Anyway, we don't need to relitigate that, but I think from obviously a personal standpoint, but also from a tennis standpoint, the fact that he's actually looking at the mental side of things right now and taking action, I think is a really, really big deal. And he's had a good run-up. Didn't have his best form in Canada, kind of scrapped his way to the semis and lost to Khachanov, who, in my opinion, based on that matchup and that head-to-head and the history, he probably shouldn't have lost that match. But then he followed it up in Cincinnati with another deep run to the semis where the heat and humidity kind of got the best of him, which is okay. So I think you're positive right now in the world of Zverev, and I think he's going to be fully back. Like, I think we're going to get peak Zverev here at the U.S. Open. All right. 4 seed is Taylor Fritz. He's got a quarter with Djokovic, Rune, Menchik, Tiafoe, Machac, Mickelson, and Nakashima. My dark horse is the winner of Kecmanovic and Fonseca. My upsetter is Tomas Machac. And early popcorn was too hard to decide, so I just wrote in first round bliss. I have my incorrect notes up here. Here we go. All right, so Kecmanovic, Fonseca. Both of them in their own ways can be a dark horse on their own merit, but this is also a draw spot for these guys. They're getting Machac second round and Menchik third round. You're getting a guy in Machac who's struggling to win matches, and Menchik, a guy who's just been really vulnerable at majors and has taken some losses, a lot of losses, to players ranked lower than him. And eventually, I'm pretty confident he's going to kind of get over the hump there. But at this stage in his career, you can never fully trust him at a slam. So you can, that's why I look at Kecmanovic and Fonseca, and I feel like they have a good chance potentially to find themselves in the fourth round if things break right. Now, it's a fascinating matchup individually where Fonseca has way bigger ground strokes than Kecmanovic, but Misha is a great pace absorber. He tries to stay on top of the baseline, and if you give him pace, he uses it for his own. He does a great job of that. So, fascinating match. Like, I think it's close. In my book, that's close to a 50-50 match. Of course, Khachanov has made a lot of noise, like in the past on hardcourt, particularly at some of the February events. He had a great Sunshine Double, I think, back in 2022. Doesn't normally play the second half of the year as well. Is not on any kind of a tear, no eye-popping form at the moment. So, and Fonseca has looked worse than he did in the first half recently. There's a couple of things that he's kind of lost track of, and he's gotten a lot more inconsistent off the ground as of late, which just has to do with discipline and decision makings and maybe some positioning stuff. So we'll see. That's a very exciting match. My upset alert is Tomas Machac. I just don't like the losses he's been taking recently. He lost to August Holmgren at Wimbledon, lost to Opelka in Canada, lost to Adrian Manarino in Cincinnati 3-3. So he's just, for me, he's not living up to his ability level and his talent level at the moment. And who does he have first round? I had trouble picking an upset alert in this section because Machac is playing Luca Nardi, and I do think that's a good first round draw for Machac. I actually have him winning that and then losing to Kecmanovic. That's what I wrote down on my draw, even though I feel like it's 50-50 between Kecmanovic and Fonseca. All right, early popcorn, first round bliss. What do I like here? I like Djokovic against Lerner Tien, which is going to be the first night session on Ash tomorrow night. I like Norrie against Korda. Korda's back and won some matches in Winston-Salem. I like Darwin Blanche against Martin Dam. This is like a next-gen, like super next-gen American battle. I do favor Blanche. They're both big serving lefties. I saw them both at the Sumter Challenger. I like Fonseca Kecmanovic as well. And yeah, let's leave it at that. Wanda Zanschkol against Runa. Botic's been playing a lot better. He's in the final in Winston-Salem, so I don't know exactly how he's going to turn up in New York and what the effects of that will be. But Botic now, since Wimbledon, has been playing his best tennis in years. So that's also potentially one to watch. Quarterfinal prediction here is Fritz defeats Djokovic. Now, this is one where I'd like to reserve the right to change the prediction. I always do a pre-quarterfinals prediction at these majors, and I will do that, of course, again. And if Novak is playing really well in the lead up to a quarterfinal against Taylor Fritz, I probably change my pick to Novak. I have him in the quarters out of respect, but honestly, I just am not expecting to see Novak's best here in New York. I said this at the start of the year, but for me, if you're not going to play enough, if you're not going to get your matches in, even if you're the greatest of all time, it's going to catch up with you. And I just don't think Novak can prepare without matches and win his 25th major like that. Like, I just think it takes a little bit of, if he wants it bad enough and if that's the choice that he wants to make, and right now it's not. He said, I just want to prioritize my family. I don't like the Masters 1000s. They're too long, so I don't want to play them, and I'll just play the majors. And that's totally understandable. And again, like, he's done everything there is to do. And we knew that we would approach this part of Novak's career where he was going to not necessarily be all in all the time. But if he's not going to make that sacrifice to play Cincy and get those matches in, I do think it's going to hurt him at a U.S. Open. I do think it's going to hurt him here. I get that, like, there's some arguments that might go against that. Like, all right, he goes into the Australian Open oftentimes without matches. That always works out all right. And that's true, but oftentimes you do your hardest training, your best and most diligent and most intricate physical and technical training in the lead up to the Australian Open. I'm not assuming that Novak was able to put in that kind of block ahead of this U.S. Open. I imagine that it was, in comparison, lower intensity. So you never know, but this is also just the hardest slam. If I can just say one more thing. If you look at the oldest major winners in history on the men's side, meaning who is the oldest, like what are the oldest winners when they won? Of the 10, only one is a U.S. Open title run. And that was Djokovic in 2023 when he beat Medvedev in the final. His most recent slam. That's the only one out of the 10. This tournament is harder to win when you're older. I saw it with Federer. I saw it a little bit with Nadal. Like in 2022. If you think about like the state of Rafa's body by that point in the year, after he started off wonderfully. I just think this is the tough one. This is the tough one when you age. I know I didn't say much about Taylor Fritz, but can you ask for much more from Taylor since the start of the grass court season? You know, it looked to me like he ran out of gas in Cincinnati, no doubt. But other than that, like he really has been, or sorry, not Cincinnati. He ran out of gas in Canada, and then what was it? I need a refresher. Oh yeah, then he lost to Ottman in 3 sets. You know, I look, Terrence was playing out of his mind. Ottman, by the way, in case anybody is wondering, like, where is he on Dark Horse? So he had to withdraw from the qualifying because he had a foot injury. So very unfortunate that Ottman cannot. I don't want to say like he definitely would have continued the momentum. Maybe not. But I think from a viewership perspective, he would have been one of the great storylines coming into the U.S. Open, particularly if he qualified, but not to be. Fritz got a good draw here. I've got him beating Menchik in the 4th round. And yeah, it's Emilio Nava, Lloyd Harris, Brandon Nakashima, Jakub Menchik, and then over Djokovic in the quarterfinal. So again, if Novak's playing well, that's a different story, but we'll have to see. 2 seed is Carlos Alcaraz. His quarter is Shelton, Ruud, Medvedev, Davidovich Fokina, Lehechka, Griekspoor, and Dartery. My dark horse here is none. My upset alert is Daniil Medvedev, and my early popcorn is Alcaraz versus Opelka, 1st round. I do not love the unseeded players in this quarter. You can look at Mute, you can look at Benjamin Bonzi, you can look at Marcos Giron, you can look at Arthur Rinderknech, Mattia Bellucci, Tomas Martin Echeverry. I just couldn't elevate anybody to that level. I couldn't go all in on anybody out of that group, and that was the group that I suppose I was considering most heavily. My upset alert, Daniil Medvedev. Well, it's been a nightmare year at the majors. It's been beyond belief. 2nd round in Australia, 1st round at Roland Garros, 1st round at Wimbledon, and now he's got a rematch of the man who took him out at Wimbledon, Benjamin Bonzi, who Daniil, after the match, said played way better than normal. Daniil said, Bonzi never plays that well, and basically I got really unlucky because he played much better than he usually plays. It's not going to feel good for Daniil if he finds himself in a battle again. Obviously, the confidence is low. There's been an identity crisis. There's been a technology crisis. There's been a physicality crisis. Like, it's just been worse in 2025 than I could have expected for Medvedev. And let's see if he can turn things around. But like Bonzi is, he proved difficult for him last time. I don't know if it's a stylistic issue when it comes to Bonzi. I love his return of serve. I think he goes down the line very well off of both wings. He's like a good, very good redirector of the ball off both wings. So those are Bonzi's strengths. I don't think it's anything in particular that is like Medvedev specific as far as the matchup is concerned. But, that's one to watch, no doubt. Also want to watch my early popcorn match, Alcaraz versus Opelka. Riley can shrink the margins, as we know, with his serve. He can play red hot in patches. I've watched him a lot in 2025, and overall, I haven't been too impressed with Riley. Just for me, lacking the level of consistency that he needs off the ground, while admitting that he never is going to be a consistent player, given how aggressively he needs to play. He just hasn't gotten to that point where I feel like he's reliable enough, even from attacking positions. But I've also seen at points this year where his forehand can get scalding hot, and then he becomes a real problem. So I think this is, battling nerves, first match of the tournament for Alcaraz, probably an Arthur Ashe night session. Could get some scratchy play from Carlos. Mistakes are punished against a server like that. I think Opelka takes a set, and I think it can be a very energetic Arthur Ashe night session. My quarterfinal here is Carlos Alcaraz defeating Ben Shelton. I definitely made a decision coming into this event, and this is not a bold call, that I'm in the Ben Shelton business coming into this year's U.S. Open. It was obviously a huge lead up, his first Masters 1000 title in Canada. And now he gets to play best of 5 where he thrives, in great atmospheres, under the brightest lights where he thrives, on a hard court, which is his best surface. Like, there's nothing not to like about Ben coming in. And it would have been really interesting had he ended up not in Sinner's draw, not in Alcaraz's quarter, but he ends up in Alcaraz's quarter. And look, previous 3 majors, he's lost to Sinner, Alcaraz, and Sinner. So I have it 4 for 4. And I have him losing to Alcaraz here. I still can't see the upset. I just think there are too many disadvantages that Ben takes the court with against Alcaraz. Movement, ball striking off of both wings. I can't quite get there. Ben played his best tennis at Roland Garros and really played a tight 4-setter against Alcaraz. You could look at it and say, well, now Shelton's on a hard court. Carlos is usually a little more beatable on a hard court. So if you run that back, now maybe Shelton is even more competitive. But I would offer up this. Ben might not play that well again, because that was really the best match I've ever seen him play, probably. All right, final weekend in 3, 2, 1. Sinner over Zverev in 4 sets. Alcaraz over Fritz in 4 sets. And Sinner over Alcaraz in 4 sets. Won't go too in depth on these. Don't want to litigate them too much. In fact, I'm going to skip over the semifinals and just go straight to Sinner Alcaraz. Will it be 5 in a row? I think that in best of 5, it actually increases the chances of seeing a 5th consecutive Sinner Alcaraz when they share a main draw. Obviously, you don't really take anything away from Cincinnati, where Jannik got the virus that knocked him out. A couple of other players did get it as well. Shouldn't be a problem. Coming into the U.S. Open, maybe a slightly weaker version of Jannik in the first round and the second round, maybe, but as we know, you don't necessarily need to be 100% if you are of Sinner's talent level in order to get through those first couple of matches. At the moment, I still lean Sinner against Alcaraz on a quick hard court, which I think are Sinner's most favorable conditions in this head-to-head, where the movement battle is a little closer because Sinner has great footing on hard court. His movement and his on-the-run play is even better. He's so good at sliding on this surface and getting a lot on his stretch forehands and his stretch backhands. The variety that Alcaraz offers up, which has been the main thing that's tormented Sinner in this head-to-head. Higher, spinnier balls, drop shots, short slices. That stuff just doesn't have the same effect on hard court. It's harder to drop shot. It's harder to play with height. And I just think mixing it up is a bigger challenge on hard court, but it's something that Carlos would really need to do. And then obviously the speed factor that we saw at Wimbledon, if Sinner can outserve Alcaraz, jump on top of points, stay on offense, keep that forehand rushed so that he's never really able to open up the court with it and unlock the full capacity of its power. That's kind of what I envision for Sinner. But obviously Alcaraz, with all of the ability he has and the level that he's capable of, it's just going to be fascinating to see how he sort of counters after Wimbledon. We didn't get to see it really in Cincinnati. So, man, it'd be a treat to see it again. Regardless of what happens, really looking forward to another U.S. Open. Again, I'll be on U.S. Open Radio and on these channels, or on this channel, Monday Match Analysis on audio platforms, Gill Gross YouTube. I will have round-by-round podcasts. If you were with me last year, you kind of know the deal. It's going to be more notebook dump style, but they actually end up being really, really fun shows. So look out for that. Make sure you're following me on Instagram and TikTok as well. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time.